Welcome to office hours. We're going to go ahead and get started. There may be a lot of questions, so we want to make sure that we get done in enough time for all of the questions that come out. So again, welcome to Performance Analytics Office Hours. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. So we'll just go over some housekeeping things before we get started. So make sure there we go. Sorry about that. Ooh, let me go back. All right. So this is for you. So we try to bring fresh ideas and better understanding and practical guidance to different things that are out there that we get within the community or questions that are directed to us directly. So again, this is your time. This is for you. So please make sure that you get everything out of it that you can. This is being recorded. We will have this out on our YouTube channel and also in the community when it's done. So if the company that you work for has an issue with recordings, you may want to drop now. So it is being recorded. It's there for you. Q&A. So please use the Q&A for any questions. Ask any questions that you'll like. We will try to answer those as we can as we're doing the actual prezo. When we get to the end of the prezo and we're actually open the floor for questions, we will answer the questions that are related to the topic first, and then if we have time, if there's any time left, then we'll go ahead and answer the other questions. And during the prezo, if we can actually answer the questions while that is happening, we'll do that as well right there in the QA. So my name is Thomas Davis, and I'm the host today, and Adam will actually be presenting today. You probably heard of both of us and seen both of us before, so this is who we are. So upcoming sessions and past presentations are always out on the community, so make sure that you go there. We try to list out anything that is in the future, and then of course there are links to everything that's already out there. You can definitely find all of the recordings in the community, whether it be on the office hour site or there are some other locations that are actually in the community, but please go out there and look around. I would suggest that you do that prior to a question that you may be getting ready to pose in the community itself, because there's a good chance that there may be already an office hours that's around or very similar to the question that you're going to ask. So I would definitely recommend that you do that prior to asking a question in the community. If it's not there and you've searched throughout the community and you can't find what you're looking for, then by all means ask a question in the community there. So again, as we've been saying in the past few office hours, the K-20 labs are still out there. Definitely take advantage of the fact that they're there for as long as they may be there. That time may be coming to an end soon. We don't know necessarily, but just take the time to go out there and look. And again, this sort of goes right back to the same thing that I said before. If there's a question or there's something that you're thinking about, there quite possibly would be a K-20 lab that is out there. Or if you just need some general learning or even some ideas of some things to do, definitely go out there and check out those and Now Learning. Take full advantage of those. So with that, today we're going to talk about burst reporting in ServiceNow. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Adam. You there, Adam?
I'm here. Thank you very much.
All right. I'll stop sharing.
All right. Am I sharing now?
You are.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay. So let's talk about burst reporting. It is a question that we get all the time. It comes up frequently enough, and it's not the most straightforward thing to do in ServiceNow. So we have scheduled reports, which allow a user to get a report. You can create a list, so I could send an email out to all my managers with active incidents. But what we get asked for a more specific use case, which we're going to go through today. All of this is made possible as we recap a little bit about Flow by using Flow Designer. So Flow Designer allows us to consolidate our capabilities and configuration. So I can, as we'll see, I'm going to configure everything I want, have access to do all these different things in a low code environment in one place. Promoting automation is, I think using this technique is something that helps you do this as a analytics owner. It's something you can do without having development, without having to wait for your admins to build something for you. Right. So it helps us promote this automation that we want to get to. So I don't have to get a report, slice and dice it, and email it out manually to all the people who need it. And then reduce costs, because once we get this to work, we'll see how easy it is to repeat. And it takes a little bit more time to get set up the first time, but then it's very rinse and repeat going forward. And then it's extendable for what we're doing today. Some of it can be done just with out of the box components, but I extended Flow Designer with a spoke that we talked about in a couple of sessions ago. We'll talk about what those are specifically in this use case, but Flow Designer, I wanted to do a little bit more a way that I wanted it to do it. So I was able to extend it and still get that low code experience for users going forward. What we're working with today in Flow Designer, there are flows, subflows, and actions. Flows and subflows are very similar, that they are calling their actions. The difference being that a flow has a trigger, a subflow doesn't. So flows might call subflows, or you might call subflow directly. But if I have the trigger, it's a flow. If I don't, it's a subflow. And they are all calling actions in an order that we want them to go through. But those three are very key to Flow Designer. And when I do trigger it, lots of different ways to trigger it. We're going to focus on our burst reporting on a scheduled execution. It's something I'm going to send an email out every morning to the right people. But I can fire a flow many different ways too, whether it's inserting a record or updating a record to a certain state. If I get an email, do something back to it. Anyway, and any way you can call a script, you can do that as well. So lots of different ways to fire what we're looking at. Today, we're going to look mostly at scheduled execution because that's the use case we see most often asked for. And then we are going to walk through some flows to go through, and Flow Designer allows me to build that flow logic out. So in no code development, we are going to do a live demo, which it's going to go smoothly. And as we do the demo, we're going to see the experience of what it's like to build. And again, I had to extend it with a little bit of code. But then once it's extended, I can reuse this over and over, and I can build as many burst reports as I want. And all that extension, even that, a lot of that, it's more of a low code experience. So I'm able to cut and paste a little bit of code into an action, but I can also reuse a lot of very common things like looking up a record. I don't have to have a code to look up a record or ask for approval or send an email. So it's a mix. We're in that low code space. Augmented it with your pro developers to get it to do what you want. But then once it does that, you can call it very easily. All right, enough about that. You'd seen it. You'd seen some of that content before. And if you want more detail on it, I recommend going back to the session from November 4th, where we go through it in much more detail. But today we're going to talk about how do I use it in this specific use case. So Joan comes up to me and asks, I need to send a report out of all my active incidents to all the managers that have them. Great, I can do that, right? I can schedule a report. I go to the report and report designer, I schedule it, and I just put in all the managers' names, or maybe the group. But then Joan adds to it. But if they don't have any, don't send it to them. Well, that's a problem, right? Because today I send the report, it goes to everybody on the distribution list, and they have to find out if it applies to them, what goes through. And then I also get it, even if they do have them, Joan adds on to it a little bit further, and only send them their incidents because they don't care about anybody else's incidents. I don't know about you. I have heard this quite a bit. This is what we're trying to do. And let's figure out how we're going to solve this. So the way that we do address it with the tools that we have is a couple different ingredients we need. We are putting these together. So we need a standard report. We are not going to do a custom notification, custom scripted thing, which is something which is an option. We're going to avoid that. I want to do as little custom work as possible and make this as repeatable as possible with even less work. So we're going to use a standard report with a dynamic filter. So really important, we're going to use a dynamic filter so that we get the is me. I get that personalization from that. Then the scheduled report, we have our standard report, and we're going to use the scheduled report job. This is important because we're not going to send a direct email. We're not there in Flow Designer. I can choose to send an email as notification. We're not going to do that because the scheduled report does a little bit more, where it executes the report, puts it in a PDF or a CSV or a PNG. It does that for us, and I don't want to recreate that, right? But what's there is good enough for me. So we're going to use that as our scheduled report. We're going to schedule them dynamically in Flow Designer, but we are using that scheduled report functionality. And I want to execute this on demand. And to do that, I have to have something that's in the scope. A scheduled report is a job. Jobs can only be executed in the scope that they're in. So there's a couple different options here. I created my report in global, so I had to have a hook into global. So I needed a very, very small script include in global to allow me to execute the job. I can call that script include from a scope, but it's got to be there. If my spoke was all in global, this wouldn't be a problem. And if my report was in my scope, it wouldn't be a problem. But it is an issue just to be aware of. And I want to be upfront that I am calling a global report. So I have a global script include to allow me to execute now. There's probably some ways to get around that. There are some ways to get around that of just using the scheduling, but the way I'm a bit of a control freak and I wanted to make sure that when I say run the report, send the report, I can execute that scheduled report now. We're using a custom spoke with actions. Again, we'll talk about what these specific actions are. There was a bigger list discussed a month ago, but we're going to talk about 3 specific actions that I use for this recipe. And then we're using Flow Designer, just Flow Designer to put it all together. So as we walk through those pieces, again, I'm using a standard report. So my standard report, I'm in Report Designer. The use case that we have is my active incidents. So I am looking for incidents are active. And then the extension we have here, which we don't always use in scheduled reports, is where the assignment group manager is me. That me is really important because we're going to schedule these reports to run one report per user, but per manager. And it's going to execute as that manager. And that's when it's going to get the me part of it. We're not running one big report and slicing it. We're actually going to run a report for each manager. So again, very important to use the is dynamic me. We're using assignment group manager. This could be assigned to, this could be department.vp, a custom field. It doesn't matter. But we are using, we want a dynamic filter that translates to a user because the report's going to run as that user that we tell it to, or those users that we give it, and evaluate me, right? It could be my groups. It could be whatever it needs to be, but it's going to evaluate to that user. It's not a parameter we send to the report. The report itself knows that. We're just calling it that way. Scheduled report. So again, the scheduled report, it's not like we're just sending an email with a message, but we are setting up, we want to use that functionality that already exists. So which email, which users to send it to, the subject. Very important here is that there are limitations in the Flow Designer. It's not smart enough to use reference qualifiers in the form. So when you schedule a report, it knows what type of report you were sending. So if I'm sending a list report, which I believe the example is here, I can only send a list report as a PDF, Excel, or CSV. If I were sending an image, I was sending a chart, a bar chart, I wouldn't have CSV or Excel. I could do PDF, but I could do PNG as well. It's important to know this because when we're putting it in, I can tell it to do the wrong thing and then it won't work right? So I know I'm trying to send a list. I need to pick one of these and not pick embedded PNG. If I'm sending a bar chart, I need to know not to pick Excel. But I know I can pick PDF or PNG. So again, be aware of what's there, even though you're not creating it. In the UI, you do have to know what the UI would let you choose. So it's good to run through it once and make sure you get the right thing. And that global script include. So this is my logic of my global script include. Again, these slides will be posted. This is not very complicated logic, but what we are using is this global script include that I have a method and it says execute scheduled report, which all it does is get a scheduled report. It queries the scheduled report table, and then it says execute now. Very simple, but the walled off natureness of scopes to protect from scoped apps doing things they shouldn't do, we have to create this entry point, which effectively gives us permission to execute scheduled reports from whatever scopes can call this. And that, again, that is the entirety. We talked about this again if we're running PA jobs in the session before. If you run a PA job, you need the same or very similar thing. There are some differences. This is permissions issue, and there are some differences between scoped APIs and global APIs. So if you need some legacy global API, you can use the same script include and put in your different methods in there. And then the custom actions. So I created a custom action. A custom action allowing that says get groups with aggregate. And what it allows me to do is to get a distinct list of values. One of the things we're looking for is who to send our report to. So again, the use case was I need to send a report of all active incidents to the managers that have them. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll give me a list of all the groups that have active incidents. And there is a nuance there we'll go through. Because we're actually going to call this twice, one to get the groups and one to get the managers, because there are some limitations on dot walking and grouping by dot walk fields and getting that data back. So we do it in two pass process. But again, I have this custom step which runs a glide aggregate to just say, give me the list of groups that have active incidents. So we have, again, that code here, very small and able to paste in. And then I have schedule a report. So in schedule a report, I have 2 steps. There are 2 steps in the one action, and one is to normalize the variables. So when I create a scheduled report, it's able to do some logic about setting defaults and putting things in. And when you just click schedule from report designer, it fills some stuff out for you. Well, what we are doing is we're inserting that record manually. So we need to, in our code, emulate what the UI actions make us do, because otherwise, by bypassing the UI, the normal business rules, the normal form layout, by bypassing all that, we could get things that don't work. So what I have in here is a very small script that just says to set my defaults. If you give me a chart title, use the chart title. If not, use the name. If you give me a subject, use the subject. But if you don't give me a subject, put in the blank, put in the name. Not hard. I think some of this actually is not done when you schedule the report. You have to put it in, and you can end up with an email with no subject. So I want to always prevent an email with no subject. So my action goes through the logic of, how do I want to set the defaults? If you don't give me this, use this. If you do, go ahead and use that. And then from there, we are just doing, this is probably a bit small, but we're doing an insert record. So we're going to create a scheduled report. And all we do in Flow Designer is say, create a record in this table and put these values in. And I drag and drop the pills to get the right values and what I want to see. Very simple, but it means that I don't have to think about this when I reuse it. This is that low code environment that I need to build once, and then I'm able to reuse it over and over again. So this is a great place where depending on how your organization works, you might want to team up with your pro developers to go, this is what I need, and then give me access to do it going forward, right? So you never have to write code, but you can work with them one time to go, this is effectively how I want to work. This is not out of the box because there's a lot of options on what you want to allow it to do, not allow it to do. And there aren't a tremendous amount of best practices on what you should or shouldn't do. It's very use case specific. So for your organization, you're going to want to decide, what am I going to let it do and what I'm not going to let it do. Okay, so we have the scheduled report. And then again, I'm a bit of a control freak. I want to send that report immediately. So I have this step or this action that calls my global script include to say, execute this scheduled report now, send it now. It's a very useful thing to have to just make sure it gets sent. I may not need this. If I just scheduled the report to send a minute from now, it would send it. I don't have to force it to go. But again, in mine, I wanted to make sure I could just make sure that report goes now. And there are those design choices, right? Do I want it to go in 5 minutes? Do I want it to go immediately? What does immediately mean? If I'm scheduling it, it probably doesn't matter. But if I'm doing it on demand, then maybe it has an effect. All considerations when you're putting your flow together about what your use case depends on. Okay, so those are the components that we have. And now we're going to go through some of the actions. So working with my pro developer, with my admin, I made sure I had all the components. I had that script include, I had my actions built out for me in a spoke. What are we going to do to configure that low code environment? So this is my burst reporter. So I schedule it. I want this to run at 6 a.m. This is showing me the time that I see it as. So I'm in Pacific time. Thomas is in Eastern time zone. So if he looked at the exact same thing, he would see 9 a.m. I see 6 a.m. That's okay. That is right. Just make sure you understand what you're putting this in as. We're going to aggregate my groups. So I'm going to get my groups with active incidents, and then I'm going to take the results of that, and I'm going to run it against to get the managers from those groups. And then we're going to go through a for loop and say, well, for every manager, send that report. This is an interesting one too, as we come through, that I don't want to just loop this through for all of the groups, because a single manager might have multiple groups. And the report handles that already, because it's just saying, give me the things where I'm the manager, so that a manager who has 3 groups doesn't get 3 emails. Putting in this second step of distincting out the managers allows us to reduce those emails. So again, very use case specific on what's the right thing to do. And that's why Flow Designer is great. We configure it for the use case. And then as we go through, very simple settings. So we have that get groups with aggregate. And this is actually, sorry, I took the screenshot later. This, on my test data, I didn't have many active incidents, but all I'm putting in is I want to get groups from accidents from the incident table, get groups with aggregate from the incident table, group by assignment group. this is an API. I do have to type in the field name. I don't have my chooser here. So I'm going to group by assignment group. And in this case, it's giving me all incidents. I really should have an encoded query, which is active equals true to meet the use case we're looking for. But again, very simple to call the code that we've already written, that we only had to write once. I'm going to call that exact same action again. And now I'm going to say, use the sysuser from the sysuser group table, group by manager. And then the condition here is scripted, and I don't think I have that in here. I will go through it in the demo. I did have to put a small script in here to do this distinct the right way. And then a for loop. For loop is very easy. All we are saying is loop through all the records that come back from step 2, right? Step 2 is the 2 records. Super simple. It's not, I don't have to know the script. I don't have to know JavaScript syntax. I just have to go, yeah, a for loop for everything in that list, go through it. And then what do I want to do? We're going to schedule a report. And again, we set all those defaults. So all I'm doing here is saying, I want to schedule a report. The report name in this case is burst test. I'm selecting the specific report I'm sending. That's got that dynamic field. I set a name, the user that's going to run as. So we're looping through and we're going to see incidents for Thomas. The user ID of Thomas is sysid. And then again, the same thing for the name and the subject, although that actually gets done in the defaults. I'm going to send it, the body of the message, and I want this to be a PNG. It's going to be a PNG attachment. And then again, I want to schedule, or I want to execute that report now. I didn't give it a time. I think I took it off of this list. When you're scheduling it, you actually, I could have another parameter, which is what time do you want to send it? Time and date, how often do you want to send it? That could all be done. That's not my use case today, but I could do it. And then we're going to have execute report. And I'll take an aside that I could merge these two together. So it could just be schedule and immediately send a report and not have to do it in 2 steps. That's again, up to you and your use cases and what's most common for you. So here we're going to schedule my report. All I'm doing is saying, send this report. In step 4, we get back a report that was created. And all we're saying is run it. Really simple. And then again, once we get it put together, we're saying at 6 a.m. every morning, get all of the groups with active incidents, take those managers and take those groups and get the distinct list of managers from there. And then for each manager, go through every manager, schedule the report that we've specified to run as them. When we specify the user, it's going to run as them. And then we want to execute that report and we'll go through that until it's done. Very simple. So my managers are, I am sending a report of active incidents to my managers only if they get it, because if they don't have active incidents, they're not going to be in the first group. They're not going to come back. Their groups will not come back in step 1. And I only want to send them there. So I'm doing that by sending that report out separately and running it as them using the dynamic filter. So again, we had a good amount of setup the first time to create my spoke, maybe to create my script include, but then from then on, I'm able to do this. And I am going to put my money where my mouth is, and we're going to do a live demo where we're going to build the no code part of this. So I am going to switch over to my browser. If everybody has any questions, we can take those now. Okay. So now we are in Flow Designer, and I'm going to take a couple notes to note things that I look at as I come through here. So the first thing is I am testing email. And if I am testing email, it is rather important that I do not send email. So I'm on a sub-production instance. My email properties I go to, which are email properties. As an admin, I can change these. So email sending is disabled for this instance. If I do need to test it for some reason, and I can view the emails that are generated, which is enough for me. But if I did need to see the emails, then what I have this set for is yes, send the emails, but send all emails to me. Send all the emails to my work address, and then you'll see what's being sent on, but that way no emails go out to real people. So again, if you're testing email stuff or testing burst reporting, make sure you test these settings so that you don't send a bunch of emails to people and confuse them. I'm not going to explain why I know that, but trust me, don't do that. Okay, so those are my email properties. My script include. So I have my global script include. So in global, I have my script include. This does have my execute data collector from the example before, but then this is the one we're looking for, which is just simply schedule a report. Again, it just says, give me a sys-ID, get that sys-auto report. By requerying, that's very fast. It also makes sure that we're not executing something that's not a scheduled report. Only scheduled reports can live in here. So that's that's the protection, so that we're not scheduling something we shouldn't be running even through Flow Designer. So get the report and then execute now. That's my global script included. And again, needed to actually run the report. But if you were just scheduling it to run at a future time, you wouldn't need this. I need a report plain and simple. So I have a report of active incidents. And again, the is dynamic me is very important. If I run this, I am, in this case, we're grouping by the assigned to. So every morning I can see the workload of the people in my group. This is on their assigned to. So for the groups I own, this is what's coming in. Perhaps there's something better. A list view might be something more appropriate to send out. Or I could do things like active incidents that have breached, right? I want to get an email of breached incidents every morning, so I know what's going on. I want to view a dashboard as well, but sometimes it's good to get that reminder as an email when it's needed, right? Not every day for nothing, but when you need to see it, you need to see it. This one's going to be simple with our test data. And then we're going to look at our scheduled emails. So right now we have scheduled email of reports. We have no scheduled emails. These are the emails in my system, or this is how we're going to validate. So there have been no emails sent this month. And then I have my list of groups. As I was debugging this, I want to make sure that in my test data, I have lots of groups that don't have managers. That's a problem for testing, so I can set some of those. And then incidents, these are this is that query we're running to say how many incidents, what incidents are active. So if I'm looking for test subjects, as long as some of these have managers, we'll get that data back. All right, let's build it. Oh, sorry, the last part is my actions. I do have those actions. So I built a custom performance analytics spoke, which lets me do things with PA, whether it's getting a score, getting just some aggregate that comes through. The ones that we are using are execute scheduled report, and get groups with aggregate. Those are the only three we need, and we talked about those a little bit earlier. So now we're going to create a flow. So I'm going to come in and click new flow. This is going to be burst test, a burst, and active incidents. I'm going to put this in global. It's fine. Spoke could probably be good, but for this case, we'll do global. This is going to, we're going to run this as system to make sure it doesn't have any problems scheduling the reports. Again, the reports are going to run as the users they're supposed to run as, but the actual creation and querying, we're going to run this as system so we don't get caught up on ACLs and who can see what. Again, use case specific, but for my use case, I think system user is more appropriate. So we'll start out with a trigger. So my trigger, we're going to do daily, and we'll do 7 a.m. sounds good to me. So I have my 7 a.m. trigger, and I'm done with that. Now we're going to add a flow. So we're going to add an action. So I'm going to go to my actions. Again, I have a performance analytics spoke. You might create something like this yourself for analytics or whatever you want to call it. This is a custom scope, performance analytics, and we are going to get groups with aggregates. So I get groups with aggregate. Again, what we talked about before, we are going to query incident. Condition is going to be active equals true. And again, I could get that from my list view. I can just come in. I get this is the right list that I want to get I will copy my query, paste that in. Group by, we are going to group by assignment group, spelling matters. Okay, that's it. We're done there. So I'm done. After I get that actually, I'm going to go ahead and put a message in here, which is get list of groups with incidents. Good. And now I'm going to add a new step. We're going to add a new action. Again, we have the list of groups. We need to get the managers. So we are going to get groups with aggregate. The table here is sys user group. Sys user group. My conditions are a little bit more complex for this one. I actually might write a new action for this, but as I was going through, I didn't want to do that yet. So I'm going to write my conditions. I'm going to have a little bit of a script to come in here. So what it does, my script variables have access to the previous steps. So this step is get groups with aggregate. Step 1, get groups with aggregate records. And what I'm doing is I loop through the object that's returned from here, and I put it into an array so that my condition is manager is not empty and sysID of sysuser group is from one of those groups. So you could do some complex processing even in line if you want to. This one's okay, but again, it's one where I might have a object to list action in this spoke if it's something it's a little bit more common for me to use. Okay, and my group by field here, I want the distinct managers from these groups. So I am going to do manager. The aggregate we're not using. This is designed to say, give me how many groups, in this case, it'd be how many groups does each manager have? That's fine, but we don't need that. It's just a bit of a throwaway thing. This is the way to distinct out the list without having to loop it. I'm getting the database to distinct for me rather than having to loop through and distinct. Okay, we're done with that. And now what do we want to do? Oh, again, I forgot my description. So let's go put a description in here. Description's super useful when you're calling the same action multiple times and doing different things. And now what do we want to do? We're not doing an action, but we're doing a flow. So I'm going to go to flow and I want a for each. And again, awesome thing with Flow Designer, I can come in and I want to do for each in step 2 and just drag that in. If I didn't like to do that, I can just click on the pill here and go through records. So you have everything available here to drag and drop, or we can come in here. And now what are we going to do for each? For each, we're going to schedule a report. So again, I have that custom action here. We're going to go to schedule report under reporting. What report are we going to send? So the report for this is my active incidents. That's the right one. The name, what are we going to send for a name? So this is where I have a little bit more configuration because it's what do I want to see. We are going to do active incidents for, I'm going to use the pill here. We're going to go to the for each. Well, it knows that it has a record. And in that record, what my get groups with aggregate returns is an array of 3 things. The sysID or it could be a choice value or the sysID, the display string, and then the count, which again, we're ignoring the count, but that's what's here, but the display and ID. So in the subject, I'm going to use the display. The user's different. The user, I'm going to come into my for each, and I'm going to pick the ID right there. So again, whether you use the picker here or you drag and drop from data, doesn't matter. It does the same thing. The subject, I believe that's handled by our default. So we're going to go ahead and just leave that empty. In my intro, this is the text of the email. Take care of these. And then the type, and again, there are different choices here than you might have. So this is a chart. I cannot send the chart in Excel or CSV because we're just have kind of a dumb list without the reference qualifiers. I could choose CSV and it will not do the right thing. Whether we'll get an error or a blank email, I'm not sure, but it's not what we want. But in this case, I can choose PDF. So I'm going to go ahead and choose PDF. And then I'm done there. My scheduled report could have had when to send it, frequency to send it. But I am going to choose an action of performance analytics, execute scheduled report. And again, the data collector and the scheduled report, pretty much the same thing, but I do separate them out. Maybe this could be one and it would allow either one of these, but it's so that way I can't accidentally send it the wrong thing. Because when we are saying to execute it, we could choose a scheduled report, which we have none of. If you knew what you wanted to do, that wouldn't be really good in this use case. But what we're going to do is just say the scheduled report, this action gives me the sysID that was scheduled. So all I want to do is pick that record. So execute that scheduled report. And again, I did paste that little bit of code in here, which we could have made a little bit better. But other than that, just drag and drop, click what you want. It asks for the information it needs, not what it doesn't. And parameters can be mandatory or not mandatory. So that's important as you're building any of these, if you're building them or you're just filling them out. So we're going to click done. That's it. We have everything. This is going to run at 7 a.m. But let's test it. Testing is always good. One of the great features I find in Flow Designer is how easy it is to test this stuff. So I'm going to click test. It's going to confirm, do you want to do this? And again, I know my emails are off. We looked, so I'm going to go ahead and run test. So it's running the test, it's doing the work, and then we have the output of the flow. And what we see here is I have an error. This didn't work. I don't know how something I wrote didn't work, but it didn't work. What happened? So overall, there was an error. My aggregate came back. I can look and see what's here. So that's what I queried. That came back with data, came back with the right data I want to see and all of the different groups. That's good. So then we come back and in here, again, I get all my users. That's good. So we're expecting to have 4 emails being sent out. Here, I can see the loop. Every one of these things comes through. So did it error on one of them or all of them? And as I go through, it errored on the first one. Oh, errored on the second one. Oh, it errored on all of them. I can go in and see what the error was. I can see the results of the different steps and what the parameters were in and out. So really, really useful to understand, oh, this is the part that's broken, right? As opposed to having a script and I don't get the right results. This is always debugging all the way along the way. And it is recording what's happening in production as well. So if there's something that doesn't work that your testing didn't catch, you can also view these logs as they're going, all the inputs and outputs, lots of logging, very easy to debug when we do have an issue. So what's the issue here is that I have a private script include in PA actions. Well, yes, I have a private script include. So I have my global script include, but I said only this scope can call it. So I need to make this available to all application scopes. We'll go ahead and click save. And now when I come back, we'll exit that because that did fail. I'm just going to run the test again. And now when I run the test, no errors, everything completed. And in the same vein here, we can come in and go through the iterations, go through the loop and see we sent out an email for Abraham Lincoln, for me, for Hans, and for Paul. We scheduled all the emails, we executed them, we got results back. Very, very good. This is what we're looking for. And as we go back to validate, did it really work, right? This looks like it worked. I feel pretty good about this. But as we look at it, we're going to see the scheduled emails. So the scheduled email reports, we are scheduling them to run on demand when they were scheduled. This is the right time for me. So I scheduled these. They're here. I don't have a cleanup job for these. They're just scheduled on demand. In my the way I configured my scheduled report is if there is another on-demand one for the same report for the same user, it will update it. So these will get reused and I'm not going to create 4 every day, but that's how you want to do it. What's new and what's not new? What should you coalesce on? All just clicking options when you're configuring Flow Designer, but you do need to configure them. This meets my use case. And then the emails, did they really go out? So when I look at my emails, yes, we sent out 4 emails. They're in send ready because we have email turned off. And if I go into one of these, we're going to see the email. So it says, we can click on this. If I preview the HTML body, take care of these. That's the email body they're going to get. And we're going to see the email attachment that they have their attachment. And I think you can see this. So we can see that this email is sent to Paul, right? I have my nice bar chart. So for Paul, this is the data he's getting with Alejandro. And if I go into other scheduled emails, and if I go into Abe Lincoln's, so this went to Abe Lincoln, we're going to view his attachment. And in his attachment, it's just for Troy is the only one that has one, right? So I get my burst reporting, pretty easy to set up. Again, the second time you saw, we went through it in maybe 10 minutes, walking through every step to get what we want to get to. You just have to know, well, who's supposed to get it? How do I get that list? And then send the report and execute the report. All right. So we saw the demo. It worked exactly as designed. And I'm going to go back. All right. So we went through the demo. What else could we do with this? And again, as we're talking through that, feel free to submit some more questions in the Q&A that we can address. But how can we expand? So this is one flow, one report. I don't burst a lot of reports, so that might be okay. I think we can make this more dynamic by building a custom table that stores what report and what's the conditions in what field, right? We just put those in. There's not a lot of fields there. I feel like we can do something to get the, to just configure this and say, I want a burst report, and the burst report executes the burst report flow that takes all of these in parameters as parameters, reads them from a table. So again, something pretty simple to do that just takes this to the next level. That might have an issue where we have to distinct out and distinct out. So that may not be appropriate here or how we want to do it or handle that somehow in some logic. But I feel like we could do a burst reporter application that seems doable. I can create an app. Oh, sorry, I flipped these two. So that's to create the app, right? Create the burst reporting app. The first one is to read the query from the report. So we had to put in the active is true. We had to do that twice. Active is true is okay, but what if it was more complex? One of the areas I was looking about was, can I read the query from the report, which you can do, but then you have to parse the query and remove something, because the is dynamic returns nothing if system user uses it, right? It has to run as Abraham Lincoln, as Hans, as me, as those managers. So either we do two queries, which is fine, or I think you could pick something up to say, use this report source, and that's the query I want to use. Or we can actually just say, for this report, get it and remove any is-me's, because we know is-me's won't work. So there's an API that parses query conditions, a little messy to build up, but once it's written as an action, again, you just call it. So that's something to look into, building the app. And then maybe something like, if this runs multiple times a day, I'm sending this out at 6 a.m. Pacific, but for Thomas, he's already on a second cup of coffee by the time I wake up. So maybe I want to have this run every day, but then pick the users to run, or run every 3 hours, every 2 hours, and send it at 6 a.m. local time for that manager, right? We have the manager, we know their time zone, we can adjust that, make it really smart. And all I have to do is make my flow just a little bit smarter to do that, and schedule it to run once an hour. And now managers get this notification 6 a.m. local time, right? Again, maybe that it works for use case, maybe it doesn't, but Flow Designer can build that up, so I don't have to think about that ever again, right? I build it once, I test it once, I can look through all my data. Again, even without the emails on, I can validate those emails are there. And I'm confident that each step, particularly if I'm using ATF for that in Flow Designer, I can make sure each step works. And all I'm really working on is my logic. I'm not worrying about my code working, right? The code will work. So ways to improve that. And then as we go through, so we went through a lot of what's going on in Flow Designer and all of those things. There is a lot more training for you. As Thomas mentioned before, the training in Now Learning is out there. So Now Learning has Flow Designer Fundamentals. It's a big course. I think we have 12 hours. There are lots to do, but it goes through building a flow, building a subflow, building an action. There's some other labs involved as well. So lots of content on this. You may want to do it. You might want to have your pro developers do it so that they can build you the right thing. Again, every organization is different, but lots of training on there. There's no reason to do this because I don't know how to do it. You can learn how to do it in a pretty short amount of time. And these labs are hands-on, really, really good labs to walk you through. Assuming you know nothing, 12 hours from then, you'll be able to do it. If you have some understanding, the more understanding you have, the faster it will go. Then that's my slide from way earlier. Then additional training. We also, on the developer side, there's Flow Designer training there as well. And the now Learning one, they'll spin up an instance for you. This one's intended to be more self-paced, even more self-paced on a PDI, on a developer instance. If you don't have a developer instance, everybody can get a out-of-the-box ServiceNow instance by going to developer.servicenow.com. And you can walk through this and see how it works. A great thing, the way I do this is that I do build my spoke in a scope, which means it's an app, and it's pretty easy to move from instance to instance. My custom applications have nothing to do with my use cases, right? They meet the needs, and I add new ones as I need to, but they are very, very, very reusable and not data specific. All the data that we're doing comes in the flows. The flows I might put someplace else, but the flows can call actions from that spoke, right? So understanding how you want to structure this, all that, the training helps walk you through some of that and what you want to think through. All right. And if you have any questions, please add them in the Q&A. If you have any questions about this, if you have any questions about anything else, performance analytics and reporting related. And as you're going through and you get hands-on, and I hope you guys do go through this, take those labs. If you get stuck, you have a question, how should we do this? Post in the community. Feel free to tag me. A lot of us live in the analytics, intelligence, reporting forum. That's a very good forum. I like it. But there's also the developer forum. That might be a good one if you have a flow designer question about how should I do this. And you can always tag analytics as a topic. And so we all see it. I certainly monitor the developer one as well. So please ask your questions. How should I do this? Share some ideas. And again, feel free to tag me. I'm not saying I'll answer, but I'll definitely look at it. And then Thomas will probably swoop in with the right answer.
So Adam, we did have a question come in, but prior to that, so let me say that was awesome and very in depth. And, from someone that's in the community a lot like yourself, I know that this is something that's asked for quite often. So it's going to be really great to be able to refer them to this office hours. And I too agree, very rarely do you do any code mistakes, although I think you just put it in the demo. I still think you're perfect at that. So we all understand what you're saying. So the question that came in, and let me see if this is necessarily related. This is not necessarily related to the topic, but there's no other ones, but I'll go ahead and ask it here anyway. So how can I run monthly year-over-year reports, not PA widget? Use case, we have an IT manager dashboard with reports only. There are 5 interactive filters, all actively used concurrently. One of the reports is a spline. Manager wants to have year-over-year spline showing previous year as a different color line. PA widget is not accessible solution because it would not be able to use the same interactive filters. Possible idea, add option to have per month without year on the aggregate report, similar to per day of week, only for month and without year. So if I'm understanding what the question is, the big overall question is being able to have year over year, but have a separate color for the previous year. So I don't know if Petra can confirm that's the question, but I believe that's what she's alluding to. He or she is alluding to.
So I believe the trend chart is what we want, and it has certain choices, and it has the month I believe has month and year. So there is not a good way of doing this without PA.
What you could do in reports, you could add an additional data set, perhaps.
Well, so the additional data set is going to be the previous year, though. It won't line up because you have to drop out the month.
Right.
The trend chart is the way to do this, but it doesn't support that use case. And we have tried. We tried the data set thing. It has the year issue there. So PA is the way that we support the year-over-year comparison when we look through it. And I get the multiple interactive filters, and concurrently it's just not supported today, depending on the filters. The way we normally address this is a workbench, where we're able to kind of slice and dice the way we want, but you can't use them all concurrently. I mean, a lot of what we get into is that we need to use, it's arbitrary which 5 I need to use or which 2 or 3 of the 5 I need to use. But we wouldn't support having 5 on at the same time when it comes down to it. And it's the way, if I needed to do this today and I absolutely had to do it, you'd have to have a custom visualization, which there is a lab on that. The K19 on the developer site has the lab on custom visualizations. And we did a session on custom interactive filters before. It's very similar. And I think it has a link to the lab that covers custom interactive filters and custom visualizations, but there is not a simple way to do this because the data sets doesn't work. The trend should work, but doesn't have the data set, the comparison you want. And then PA has a year over year, but PA won't support. In a workbench, you can kind of get 3 levels of breakdown, depending on what they are, but you can't get 5. So not a great answer, but you could build your own report with your own visualization to get it to be custom. If that was the only thing that you needed to do, you could get it to work. And good luck. And again, if you go look at the office hours for custom interactive filters, there is a link to the lab and the recording it's from CreatorCon 19, but in Knowledge 19. And there's the recording, and there is the walkthrough of the lab that goes to the visualizations with a bunch of examples. We don't have that one, but there's a couple that'd be pretty close to that. And then you just have to, you actually would then be querying multiple data sets and then merging them on your own rather than having the system do it.
Thanks, Adam. Are there any other questions about anything?
All right, we can give people like a few minutes of their time.
Yeah, let me go ahead and share. So
everybody wants to sign off and get started really quickly.
Yeah.
And I will mention that I built this all on a Paris instance. I don't think there's anything we did that wouldn't work on New York or Orlando. I think you should be fine. Before that, there were some changes, I think, in Madrid, but I think actually still would all work. And then there are some enhancements that are planned to come forward that should help this as well. So I think this is an active area to kind of nurture and get people using your analytics in your workflow. We get it to the right people. We sent an email, but maybe send a Slack message. Lots of things you can do with the scheduled jobs and other things that are going in. A question did come in about how do you tag somebody on the community? I believe you can just do @ and their username and their name. So mine's @Adam Stout. I think Thomas's is @Thomas Davis.
Yep.
And we come in. I think we both use our full names, and there's nobody else with our names. So when you tag us, I'm pretty sure you always get us. If your username or your display name is a single letter or multiple letters, something like that, then I'm not sure what it's going to do there. But for Thomas and myself, David is often on the call. And then there's a lot of other really smart people that know. Feel free to tag us, and it does alert us that there's a tag, and I definitely don't skip the ones that are tagged.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Adam. Awesome presentation today. So real quick, so we can kind of close and give you a little bit of time back. Like Adam said, we know you all are ready to start creating some scheduled reports, some burst reporting. So again, this is a slide that if you've been on the call before, you've seen before, but for anybody new. So there's a great post out there that actually explains better on how you should ask a question in the community so you can get better answers to the question that you have. So, please check that out. Again, like I talked about early in the call, make sure you search first. There's probably a good chance that what you're asking is probably out there in the community or the docs or even on the developer site. So, look for those first, and then be very, specific about your issue. And if you can actually attach screenshots in some cases, that really helps out a lot as well. So, but definitely check out this blog, and it'll help you make really good questions. So we make sure we give you the right answer. So again, as you saw earlier, please go and check out our office hours page within the community so you can see what is upcoming in the future. And then again, of course, see that anything that was in the past to help you out with that is always out there and updated regularly. And we, of course, need your help. So if there are questions or anything that you'd actually like to see in a future office hours, please let us know that. So please share something in the community and tag, of course, Adam, myself, or David as well. And we'll definitely try to get that on the list in the future. So actually, it's missing a slide. Where's the slide? I don't know where it went. But actually, for the upcoming, I don't know where it went. Probably had it.
I hit it.
I think it's after. But the next office hours actually that I'll be presenting on December 16th is actually going to talk about some advanced and leveraging formula indicators, actually getting into using the new feature of methods to actually make the formula indicators work even better for you, different situations or whatnot. So please come back on December the 16th. And be present for that one as well. So until next time, remember, use the community, ask your questions away, but make sure that you search first to make sure that an answer is not out there. Again, you can catch up on previous office hours on that office hours. If you go to the performance analytics actually community site, you'll see a button that says office hours where you can go and see the existing one. Ideal portal, don't forget about that. So quite often there are questions that are asked in the community that they're just not available yet within the platform itself. And we definitely recommend that you go and put in an idea in the ideal portal. So hopefully that can get reviewed and potentially be in a future release. And take some training. So if you're new to performance analytics, there's some really good training that's out there in Now Learning. The essentials and fundamentals and advanced courses that are out there. And then, of course, the K20 labs are a great source that you can bring yourself up to speed on a lot of different things that are out there. But if you're not able to find anything within the training or in the K20 labs, then please feel free to ask away in the community. There are some great experts that are even outside of the Now Intelligence teams. There's people that are customers just like yourself that are really good at what they do, and they answer questions as well. So hopefully your questioner will get a great answer from that. So with that, I think we'll give you 5 minutes back to your day. I don't see any more questions, and thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it.